Okay. Hello, everyone. So my name is Alexey, and today I have an honor to start our meetings about Web3, and to make sure that we all on the same ground, I start with a brief introduction of what Web3 is. So we will start from the very beginning and the foundation of Web3, from the beginning of the internet, then how web appeared and how it evolved through a couple of generations. And one of the most important things to understand is that web and internet are completely different things, because many confuse them, and it's important to understand what is the difference. So internet is actually a networking infrastructure which connects devices around the world when they are connected to the same network, which is internet. So it's like just an infrastructure. And those lucky may understand this picture and see what it was on the early stages when we had to use dial-up internet, and it was not so adopted and fast like we have now. Next, what is web? So actually web is just like a space of information and tools and schemas, like rules for accessing it. So it's in our understanding what we use to now, it's a set of web pages that are interconnected between each other using hyperlinks, and a set of tools like browsers and some other tools that allow to access this information. And what it was meant to be. Tim Berners-Lee, who is an inventor of World Wide Web, or web, what we call it now. So he wanted web to be a collaborative medium, a place where everyone can meet, read, and write any information to the web. So in a few words, internet connects devices, so it's an infrastructure, and web connects information. And now we are starting like a journey of web. It's not a common term. I just named it Web 0 to mark a starting point for web. It was like one of the very first applications of the internet. It was used, a very specific tool which was used inside companies and research organizations by researchers and students to access some bits of information. But it wasn't like highly accessible like it is now. And the main idea was to make this content, which was not much content at that time, but to make it easily accessible. So the next comes WebOne. It's somewhere between 1995 and 2005. So maybe early 2000s. So what is WebOne? It's actually a static read-only web. It was the time when companies like AOL and some others started to creating portals, which were mostly static. They were not accepting any user input, and they just showed information. So this era was driven by development of web browsers. So when Microsoft announced Internet Explorer, and there was also a web browser Mosaic, which later became Netscape Navigator, this was the biggest step towards open internet like we have now, open web, because it allowed everyone from home to access internet and browse web pages. And in short, it also can be described as a web where companies create content, static content, and they monetize it. So they get all the profits from showing this content to the public. And one important thing to notice is that by design, web was meant to be open and decentralized. And WebOne actually was kind of open and decentralized because at that time, there were not big data centers. The whole internet was actually hosted on the user machines. And on the picture here you can see a sticker from the Tim Berners-Lee computer in CERN, which says that this computer should not be turned off because it powers the internet. It was one of the servers. So, yeah. Then here comes the Web 2.0. It's actually a web we all know right now. It's a dynamic web. It was driven by some technologies like Ajax, HTML5, Flash at some time, and others, which made it possible to create interactive applications which allowed users to create content in the web. Not only access it, but also create. And it was a very big step towards like what we have now. And it can be described as a web where users generate content, but companies still monetize it. So as you know, if you're doing like some activity on Twitter or Facebook or something else, all content that you're creating, it's actually owned by the company, not by you. And it leads us to the web we have today. It has a lot of good things, but we will see some of the not so good, and we will later see how Web3 addresses them. So what we have today, all web is like powered by big data centers, which are centralized data storages that host all the web applications and so on. All, as I mentioned earlier, all data is owned and used by service providers. So they see the value of data and they try to own it and monetize it. So they're selling user data to make like better, more personalized advertisement, content feeds, and so on. Another problem with current internet is it can be censored. I guess everyone heard about some cases when some some posts in the internet that are not acceptable by governments and so on, they're being deleted, removed, censored, and so on. The next problem is that with current setup of the infrastructure, we have a very low data safety and availability, which means that we all hear about various data breaches, data leaks, and so on. And in fact, like every year, we have billions of personal data and accounts and credit cards information and so on stolen. And another problem with this is that data in the current internet, it is not available forever. So it's not like a very rare occasion when you try to access some web page or some blog post that you've seen some time ago, but it is not exists anymore. And another big problem is that almost all whole internet, a web today, is advertisement driven. So you all see a lot of advertisements on all websites, and the problem with this, like the core of this problem, is that with current web there is no way to transfer value. And the only way to monetize everything you do in the internet is to advertise it and then sell it directly to the consumers in the more usual convenient ways. So now we have a transition to Web3, but let's try to figure out what Web3 actually is. And if you try to find what it is, you will see a lot of different words like edge computing, decentralized networks, semantic web, artificial intelligence, 3D technologies, and they all make a total of a Web3. But from all this, we need to understand, actually, understand what value actually Web3 gives and what shift it does to the current state of the web. So, Web 2 transformed our understanding of web in a way that it made a very big shift in information transfer. It made it borderless, so you have no borders, and you can transfer information globally. It's instant. You can send a message to anyone on the different continent, and it will be delivered instantly. It's affordable, so it's quite cheap to use. and it's available to everyone. But with a Web3, we believe that the biggest shift that is made in the world currently is that Web3 enables shift in value transfer. So what it means? It means that it's not only possible to share information on the web and transfer it, it's possible to make a transfer of value. And now I will describe how it was made possible. So you all know Bitcoin. I guess everyone heard of it. And this is a technology that made the biggest impact on the current state of the Web3, because it made this single thing available. It's a transfer of value in a secure and transparent way. It was not possible before this, because before Bitcoin, if you wanted to transfer any value in the internet, you had to use forms for credit cards. You still have to use them in most cases. But it's obviously not the safest way to do it, because as we already mentioned, current web, it's prone to the data leaks and so on. And what we came to. So Web3 is a fully open, decentralized web, which on the other hand, from WebOne and Web3, it allows users to create content, own all the data they create in the web, and also monetize it. And the Web3 have three main properties. It enables transfer of value. It allows users to own their identities in the internet and all the data. It enables decentralized applications and decentralized data storage. It's actually mostly driven right now by Bitcoin, which started it. It's not so used for smart contracts, but we also have Ethereum, which made the biggest impact on how people understand Web3 applications, because it made smart contracts available to anyone and quite easy to make and deploy and run. And some examples like IPFS, which is used to store data in a decentralized way. And here comes the question. So I guess many of you heard that Web3 and blockchain, they always come together. And what is the difference? It's very important to understand that Web3 and blockchain is not the same thing. Actually, blockchain is kind of infrastructure for Web3. Think of it like internet for web in general. But it looks very good. Web3 sounds good, but it actually has some limitations. And we have identified three main limitations. There are quite a few more, but they can be generalized in these 3 points. The first one is scalability. And it comes from the decentralized nature of Web3, where all transactions should be validated by miners, validators in the network, and then propagated to all the other nodes and users in the network. So it takes time. Next one is user experience, which is obviously one thing that still lacks in Web3 space, is that using Web3 applications is actually not so easy, because there are a lot of, they're slower, they don't give the feel of real-time applications that we are used to in Web 2.0. And it requires additional software like MetaMasks for working with Ethereum networks and so on, and education to understand what it actually is. So there is still no way to make it completely unseen for users that they are interacting with Web3 application. And last problem is cost. So while it still can be quite cheap to make transactions in the network, it's still very costly to store data in the networks, in the blockchains itself. So for example, even a quite few years ago, when Ethereum wasn't costing over $3,000. So at that time already, storing 1 gigabyte of data in Ethereum network cost somewhere near $80,000. So that's a problem. And the cost of transactions is actually closely tied to the second problem of user experience. Because, for example, in Ethereum network, as we all know, it's a foundation for most decentralized applications we have now. So the problem here is that any transaction requires a fee to be paid. And it ruins the user experience because in most scenarios, people don't get used to pay for simple transactions like registration, changing the username, changing some personal data or something else. But in most current implementations, we still have to pay these fees. And how this is solved, actually. So, for example, with costs, there are some various hybrid models which allows to create some transactions free for general transactions and only get fees from financial transactions. And UX is also getting better and scalability getting better with different approaches for interchain communications and off-chain clusters and so on, which tries to boost the overall performance of the networks. Yeah, and to demonstrate, just a quick demonstration, the picture here is addressing the scalability problem. Maybe someone heard about CryptoKitties, which was at some point of time one of the most used decentralized applications in Web3 space. And it showed that scalability of Ethereum network, which it was deployed on, is actually not so good because the network almost died under the pressure from these investors wanting to buy CryptoKitties. So transaction fees grow a couple of times, block producing time become very long. So the overall performance of the network was highly affected only by one application. So there is still work to do. And some examples of what we have right now. Even though I was speaking about a lot of things and maybe some of them were quite fantastic and futuristic, we already can see many of examples of Web3 in our world. So for example, we can see personalized content and advertisement. This is a Web3, kind of. Decentralized finance applications. This is a Web3. NFT. I guess many of you already heard of it, NFT trading portals like OpenSea, they all Web3 applications. Semantic engines, so like Wolfram Alpha is quite one of the earliest examples of Web3 actually. Also we have metaverses, and you can see Fortnite here and wonder what it actually makes to the list, how it makes to this list. But these games like Fortnite, they're already not just a game, they are becoming these metaverses where people spend more time and they can do various activities besides just gaming. Like voice assistants, like Google Assistant, Siri. This is exactly some examples of Web3 coming. It's not yet complete Web3, but it's some of the pieces coming together. So Siri and Google Assistant, they all provide you with personalized data, information, not only links to the web pages, but they can construct a complete answers to your questions. And another great example is Internet of Things. So you can see a lot of sensors around the world that transfer information and that communicate with each other and so on. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. Thank you.